you sit down to rest. Actually rest. Not scroll, not check emails, not do something productive disguised as relaxation. Just sit, and within 30 seconds, your chest tightens. Anxiety creeps in. A voice in your head starts listing everything you should be doing instead. The guilt arrives like clockwork. Why? You're not doing anything wrong. You're not hurting anyone. You're literally just existing in a chair. But somehow, this feels more forbidden than lying or stealing or breaking actual rules. Rest has become the thing you need permission for, and you never quite feel like you have that permission. This isn't about being lazy. This isn't about lacking discipline. This is about something way deeper that's been programmed into how you see yourself. Let me show you what's actually happening. Think about the last time you felt completely okay doing nothing. Not relaxing after finishing something. Not recovering from being sick. Just doing nothing because you wanted to. Can you even remember? For most people, that memory doesn't exist, because somewhere along the way, you learned a very specific equation. Your value equals what you produce. Not who you are, what you do. When you're working, creating, helping, achieving, moving towards something, you feel justified in existing. You have a reason to take up space. You're contributing. You're useful. You matter. But when you stop, when you're not producing anything, suddenly you're just consuming resources, taking up oxygen, wasting time that could be used for something worthwhile. And the guilt comes in to punish you for that crime. The crime of existing without justification. Here's what makes this so insidious. The guilt isn't actually about rest. It's about worthlessness. Your mind has been trained to believe that unless you're actively doing something valuable, you have no value. Rest becomes evidence of your uselessness. Proof that you're not pulling your weight. A sign that you're falling behind while everyone else keeps moving forward. So your nervous system treats rest like a threat. Not a threat to your body. A threat to your social position. Your place in the hierarchy. Your right to be included, cared for, supported by others. Because here's the deep fear underneath the guilt. If I stop being useful, people will stop needing me. And if people stop needing me, I'll be abandoned. This fear is ancient. For most of human history, being part of the group meant survival. Getting kicked out meant death. And the way you stayed in the group was by being valuable, by contributing, by pulling your weight. So your brain developed a very simple mechanism. Feel terrible whenever you're not contributing. That discomfort keeps you moving, producing, proving your worth. It keeps you safe. Except now that mechanism is broken. Because the world has changed, but your nervous system hasn't caught up. You're not actually in danger of being abandoned if you rest for an afternoon. But your body doesn't know that. It still thinks you're in a small tribe where every person needs to contribute, or the whole group suffers. So it sounds the alarm. Danger. You're being selfish. You're letting people down. Get back to work. And you obey. Not because you want to, because the guilt is unbearable. Notice how rest feels different when you've earned it. When you've worked hard all week and finally collapse on Sunday. When you've been sick and need to recover. When you've accomplished something big and give yourself permission to celebrate. In those moments, rest feels okay. Sometimes even good. Why? Because you've paid for it. You've justified your existence through your productivity. You've proven your value. So now you're allowed a brief pause before you have to prove it again. But rest without earning it. Rest just because you're a living being who needs rest. That feels like theft. Like you're taking something you don't deserve. Consuming resources without giving anything back. Being a burden instead of an asset. This is why you can spend an entire day off feeling anxious about not working. Why vacations feel stressful. Why lying in bed past 8 in the morning creates a sense of wrongness even when you have nowhere to be. It's not about the rest itself. It's about what rest means in your internal economy of worth. And that economy is bankrupt. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. Let's go deeper into how this trap actually works. You know that feeling of needing to always be doing something? Where even when you're watching a show, you're also scrolling your phone? Where you can't just eat a meal without checking emails? Where every moment needs to be filled with productivity, or at least the appearance of it? That's not ADHD. That's not a personality trait. That's your nervous system trying to prove your value every single second because it believes your survival depends on it. Here's the mechanism. Your brain has learned to associate activity with safety and stillness with danger. When you're moving, doing, producing, you feel like you're in control. You're managing your life, handling your responsibilities, moving forward. Even if you're exhausted, even if you're burning out, the movement itself feels safer than stopping. Because stopping means facing what you've been running from. The possibility that without your doing, you're not enough. Think about what happens when you try to rest. Within minutes, your mind starts generating tasks. Things you forgot to do. Things you should be planning. Things that will go wrong if you don't handle them right now. Is that real? Are those things actually urgent? Or is your mind just creating reasons for you to get back to doing? Because doing is how it knows you're safe. Most of the time, it's the second one. Your brain is literally inventing problems to solve, so you'll stop resting. Because rest feels like giving up your position in the hierarchy, like letting your guard down in a competition you can't afford to lose. This is why rest feels like falling, like losing ground, like everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. Not because they actually are, because your nervous system interprets rest as losing status. And losing status triggers the same fear response as physical danger. Here's where it gets really twisted. You can't even enjoy the things you do to relax anymore. You watch a show, but you feel guilty for wasting time. You take a walk, but you feel like you should be exercising instead. You read a book, but you think about all the work emails piling up. You spend time with friends, but you calculate whether this socializing is worth the hours you're not being productive. Everything becomes measured against the question, is this valuable enough to justify taking time away from work? And the answer is almost always no, because work is how you prove your worth. Everything else is just distraction from that essential task. So you end up in this impossible situation. You need rest to function. But resting makes you feel worthless. So you're exhausted all the time and guilty all the time, and you can't figure out how to escape because both options feel terrible. This is the trap, and it's running millions of people into the ground right now. Let me tell you what's really happening. You're operating under a contract you never agreed to. The contract says you must constantly prove your right to exist through your productivity. Your value is determined by your output. Your worth must be earned daily. Rest is a privilege granted only after sufficient contribution. Nobody ever showed you this contract. You never signed it, but you've been living by its terms your entire life. And here's the thing, it's a lie. Your value doesn't come from what you produce. Your worth isn't determined by your productivity. Your right to exist isn't something you need to earn. You are valuable because you exist. Period. Not because of what you do, because of what you are. A living being. That's it. That's the whole reason. Everything else is a story. A story about how the world works that you inherited from a culture obsessed with production and terrified of stillness. But the story isn't true, and your body knows it. That's why rest feels both terrible and necessary. Terrible because the story says you're being bad. Necessary because your actual being knows you need it. The guilt is just the story trying to maintain control, trying to keep you on the wheel, trying to prevent you from discovering that you were always allowed to stop. Notice what happens in nature. Animals rest without guilt. They sleep when they're tired. They lie in the sun. They play. They do absolutely nothing for hours at a time. And nobody questions their right to exist. Nobody demands they justify their rest through prior productivity. They're alive. That's enough. But humans? We've created this bizarre reality where being alive isn't enough, where you need to constantly prove you deserve your own existence, where rest is treated like a moral failing instead of a biological necessity. And we wonder why everyone is exhausted, anxious, and burnt out. The exhaustion isn't from working too hard. It's from never being allowed to stop working, from carrying the constant pressure to justify yourself, from treating your own existence like a debt that needs to be repaid through endless productivity. You're not tired because you're lazy. You're tired because you're running a race that has no finish line. Because you're trying to earn something that was never yours to earn in the first place. Your worth was given, not earned. It exists because you exist. And rest doesn't diminish it. Rest doesn't need to be justified. Rest is not a privilege or a reward or something you have to pay for with exhaustion. Rest is a requirement of being alive. Just like eating, just like breathing. Nobody feels guilty for breathing, but we've been taught to feel guilty for resting. And that teaching is destroying people. So here's what you need to understand. The guilt you feel when you rest is not truth. It's conditioning. It's a program running in your nervous system that's trying to keep you safe in a world that no longer exists. You don't need to earn rest. You don't need permission. You don't need to justify it or make up for it or feel bad about it. You just need it. Because you're alive. And that's enough. When you really get this, when you understand it not just intellectually but in your body, something shifts. Rest stops feeling like falling and starts feeling like landing, like coming home, like remembering something you forgot a long time ago. The guilt doesn't disappear immediately. The old program is strong. It's been running your whole life. It won't just shut off because you intellectually understand it's wrong. But you can start questioning it. Every time the guilt appears, instead of obeying it, you can ask, is this true? Do I actually need to earn my existence? Or is that just a story I inherited? And slowly, the grip loosens. You start taking breaks without needing to justify them. You start lying down in the afternoon because you're tired, not because you've earned it. You start saying no to things without explaining or apologizing, not because you've become lazy or selfish or irresponsible, because you've remembered that your value doesn't come from your productivity, that your worth exists independent of what you do, that you're allowed to exist without constantly proving yourself. This changes everything. Your relationships improve because you're not constantly keeping score of who's contributing more. Your work actually gets better because you're not running on empty all the time. Your health improves because you're finally giving your body what it needs instead of forcing it to keep performing. You become more present, more alive, more yourself, because you're not spending all your energy trying to justify your existence anymore. You're just existing and using your energy for things that actually matter instead of burning it all on this endless, anxious proving. Here's what people don't tell you about guilt-free rest. It's not about lying around doing nothing all day. It's about releasing the constant pressure to justify yourself. You might actually end up doing more when you stop feeling guilty about rest. Because you're not exhausted. Because you're not fighting yourself. Because your energy is directed toward things you actually care about instead of things you think you should be doing to prove your worth. Guilt-free rest creates space for real work, real connection, real life. Guilty rest creates nothing but more exhaustion and resentment. You're resting, but you're not actually recovering because you're spending the whole time punishing yourself for resting. So you end up depleted either way, working or resting, because both are poisoned by this underlying belief that you don't deserve to exist unless you're producing. And that belief is a cage. The moment you see it as a cage, you can start finding the exit, not by working harder to prove yourself, by stopping, by resting, by doing absolutely nothing and discovering that your value remains unchanged. That's the practice. Rest without earning it. Exist without justifying it. Be alive without constantly proving you deserve to be. And watch what happens to the guilt. It'll show up. It'll scream. It'll list every reason why you should be doing something else. Let it. Don't fight it. Don't believe it. Just let it be there while you rest anyway. Because guilt is just a feeling. It's not truth. It's not a command. It's just your nervous system running an old program that doesn't serve you anymore. And the more you rest despite the guilt, the quieter it gets. Not because you're doing anything to fix it, because you're proving to your system that rest is safe. That stopping doesn't lead to abandonment. That your worth doesn't disappear when you're not producing. Your nervous system needs evidence. And the only way to give it that evidence is to rest. Actually rest. Without earning it. Without justifying it. Just because you're alive and you need it. That's how the program updates. Through experience. Through repeatedly showing your body that it's safe to stop. That you're allowed to just be. This is the work. Not working. Resting. Guilt and all. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments. I rest without earning it. Write it as your promise to yourself. Nobody,